celebrating the power of possibility.
I'm Chief Paul Noel, and I believe anything is possible.
This is Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill, and this is, I guess we can still call you the new Knoxville Police Chief, Paul Noel. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I've been in Knoxville now about 11 months, so that newness is starting to wear off.
Well, thank you for being here. Just in the last few months of this year, people in law enforcement have been under tremendous pressure, not just here, but in other cities. I want to start our conversation there and work our way back to your beginnings. What's going on with law enforcement these days? What are you seeing? What are your officers dealing with? It's a whole different environment.
This is probably one of the most challenging times in American policing in the modern era. You know, we have so much going on now with these mass shootings across the country that you're seeing everywhere now. We have, two almost right now in our own backyard with Nashville and Louisville. And you also have, police officers are leaving the profession in record numbers all across the country, not just here in Tennessee. And you have, new expectations of police officers, and rightfully so. It is just a really difficult and challenging time to be a police officer. But it's also an exciting time because there's new technology and we're delivering services that we've never done before. So it's challenging, but it's also really exciting. Give
us a sense of the scope, size, budget of the Knoxville Police Department.
Sure. So the Knoxville Police Department has almost 500 employees, and right now we have about 375 police officers, sworn police officers. We have an authorized strength of 416 police officers. Just about every one of those police officers have a vehicle, so there's vehicles that we need to maintain. We're moving into the old St. Mary complex in North Knoxville. That's going to be a brand new facility for us. We have a budget of about $80 million. And this is it's a mid-size organization, but it's also like running a mid-size corporation as well.
Why are you in law enforcement?
I started out as a 21-year-old kid as a New Orleans police officer, and I did not want to be a police officer. I wanted to be a New Orleans police officer, and I grew up in New Orleans watching NOPD work special events. That's one thing that NOPD really kind of has the market cornered on is crowd control. And watching those officers work Mardi Gras for 2 weeks straight, Jazz Fest, St. Patrick's Day, all the major events in the French Quarter and throughout the city. And it was something that drew me to the
What did
department.
You see, though? What did you see that made you say, I want to do that?
Well, first of all, as a young kid, I saw those powder blue uniforms with the hats and those officers out there. And when you watch a Mardi Gras parade, everybody has to stand on the curb on the neutral ground, which we call the neutral ground. It's really the median everywhere else in the world. And those police officers, they stand right in the center of the street, and the band walks around them. And seeing those officers in the powder blue uniform, they look like they were having so much fun. And watching them interact with the crowd, watching them help a lost kid find their way home, watching them break up a fight, it just looked like something that was very exciting.
So you're growing up in New Orleans. What was it like growing up there?
So, New Orleans was really a great place to grow up. It's a very diverse city. I was able to, I was in Catholic school my whole life. I was in all-boys school from 5th grade going up.
Oh, wow.
Which is there's pros and cons of that. And, growing up in the city, I went to school from 5th grade on in the 9th Ward, so the same 9th Ward that you saw flood during Hurricane Katrina. My school, I was the first person, I believe, to go on my high school campus and see the destruction of the school that I love. I still love so much. I'm still very active in the Alumni Association. But New Orleans was a great place to grow up. It was, so much to do. The sportsman's capital were if you like to hunt and fish, and just a great community, great music.
So high school, did you go to college? Where?
I sure did. So I went to Loyola University, which is in New Orleans. I did my undergraduate school there and grad school. I started college and I dropped out to become a New Orleans police officer. And my dad reminded me every day that I needed to go back at some point. So I went back and I finished, and I kept going and got my master's.
So you've built this life in New Orleans. So you're there in the middle of Katrina.
Yes.
What in the world was that like?
Wow. So, I tell everybody with Hurricane Katrina, I'm so glad I went through it, but I really hope that I never have to go through it again. And it was traumatic. It was tough. I was the second in command of the police district, which was in the French Quarter. So we had the task of maintaining the historic part of the city to keep it from burning down. And remember, there was no water. And I remember watching the fire department try to put out fires, and all the water they had was in the fire trucks. That was it. There was no water service, no sewage, no anything. And watching all of those people navigate through the French Quarter to get to the convention center and the Superdome to try to find help and try to help those people. And also all the nursing homes and assisted living facilities that had no air conditioning, the windows didn't open. I remember us busting the windows out with our sticks just so they could get some air in, and watching those people suffer and carrying ice up 11 flights of stairs to try to keep people alive was rough.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel.
If I'm born and raised in New Orleans, I love the powder blue. I go to Loyola. I'm going to the Catholic school there. It seems like you're supposed to be in New Orleans. I'm trying to figure out how you end up in East Tennessee as our police chief.
That's a great question. And I was navigating through my career at NOPD. One of the things that I really tried to do, and the advice that I give young people, regardless of what profession that they go in, I tell them two things: be well-rounded. So I've served in numerous different jobs through at the NOPD. I worked on the staff of the chief, and I always made fun of those staff people. I did that work just so I could learn the back of the house, the accounting part of the job. Served in a wide variety of positions. So that's the one thing I tell everybody is be well-rounded. But the other thing I tell them is learn every aspect of the job. Learn, if you're going to supervise something, you need to know how to do everything. If you're going to be the captain of the ship, you need to know how to fix the engine, even though you might have to get down there and actually fix it yourself. You have people for that. So being well-rounded and having all of those different experiences in New Orleans, I could have stayed in NOPD and been a deputy chief for the rest of my career and been satisfied. But, the reality is only one person gets to be the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department at a time. And if I wanted to try my hand as the chief executive of an agency, I really felt my best shot was to look elsewhere. So I was going to look in a few areas, and I was lucky enough that God graced me with this position, and I'm going to do the best job that I can during the period that I'm going to be occupying the chief's position here.
Were you there during the tenure of, well, I guess so, if you were there during Katrina, Mayor Ray Nagin?
Yes, I was.
Right, so that was a whole, so you've been through a lot. So you've seen cities and organizations go through a lot of upheaval, and then there was a whole thing with the NOPD. You guys had to fix the organization. You were there for that.
Twice.
And I would imagine going through all the things you've been through, personally and professionally, now to lead this organization as it transforms, do you find yourself leaning on what life has taught you, what your experience has taught you?
So it's a combination of, I was part of two turnarounds in NOPD, right? NOPD was a really large organization, and like a lot of major cities have gone through ups and downs. So when I started in '97, that was when Richard Pennington came. He was the police chief that came in from out of town, and he was brought in to reform NOPD. So I was a brand new officer under Chief Richard Pennington in the '90s. And so I was a part of that turnaround. And then 2010, in the second turnaround, when Chief Ronald Serpaz came from Nashville to New Orleans to be our chief, I was a part of that turnaround as well. So I got to witness that turnaround. But I think the bigger thing that has helped me is that in the last 7 or 8 years, I've been able to network with police chiefs all around the country. And I have a network of current and former chiefs that I could pick up the phone and call. And the thing is, every time you call up and say, this is a problem I have, they've all been through it. and they've been a great resource to help me through these problems.
When police departments go bad or start to deteriorate, what's the principal cause of that?
I think it's leadership. I really do. I think what you find in most organizations, even in NOPD, when NOPD was really at its lowest in the mid-90s when I was in high school, and most of the officers on NOPD are good, hardworking people, but leadership enables bad behavior because they want the results. And I really think the common denominator, and I've studied this my whole life, I think it really revolves around strong leadership, and that's why we're created the program in New Orleans, Ethical Policing is Courageous and Able Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement out of Georgetown University, which teaches active bystandership, which encourages everyone at every level to not have the ends justify the means.
Every organization has good people, bad people. And I guess as a leader, you have to set the tone, set the standard for the culture of the organization. But then you also have to make the tough decisions to get people to move on and get them out of law enforcement. How do you go about that?
Well, I think that's the most important piece. There's that old axiom, culture eats policy for breakfast or something like that. And as the chief executive of this agency, it's my job to set the tone, right? And I think I was very deliberate with that coming in as the new chief, but that only goes so far. What we really need to do to have long-term success is to build a culture within the agency that no one within the department tolerates that bad behavior, because there's no way that I could catch it all. There's no way the leadership could catch it all. What we need is when an officer sees something, they say, we don't do that here anymore. And to me, that's when you've reached that turning point, when you start to see that.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about officer morale. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, you really have to believe in service. You look at what some officers have had to go through in some of the recent things that we've seen in the news. You're rushing in when everybody else is rushing out. But this puts a tremendous human toll on families. Yes. Right? The divorce rate amongst law enforcement is huge. You'll spend so much time at work, it becomes your life. Speak to that. And did you experience that as a rank and file member of law enforcement?
Absolutely. So, I'm divorced, and the reason I'm divorced, I know exactly why I'm divorced. I was in an investigative unit, and I had the best job in the world, and I did what you see on TV. When you watch Law and Order, that's what I did. And I was addicted to work. And, in this violent city like New Orleans, there's no shortage of murders, shootings, robberies, rapes, assaults. And I worked around the clock. I love work. There was as much overtime as we could work. And, you get attached to your cases. You get attached to your victims, right? If you're working a murder and you're dealing with someone's mother, how do you tell them no when they call, even when you're off, even when it's in a weekend, even if you're on vacation? And I could not find that balance, and there's no doubt it has affected my life. There's no doubt that all of the crime, poverty, and despair that I've seen in my 26 years of doing this since I was my whole adult life has affected the chemistry in my brain some kind of way. I'm remarried. I have a young child. I have a great wife who's very understanding, and that's the first thing you need is a partner that's understanding. But I try to have more of a work-life balance. I focus on it. But I am nowhere near, not even close to what I would call normal with that.
I would imagine then, as you lead the KPD, as you're trying to recruit and retain officers, as you're trying to improve the quality of life of your officers, you think a lot about that.
Absolutely, but this is really a challenging time to be policing, and it's also, it's tough leading police because change is challenging. And right now in KPD, we're going through a lot of change right now to modernize, to bring this department in compliance with best practices across the country. And that's my number one focus right now, is to make sure that the police officers understand why we're doing certain things as we modernize, as we bring the department in line with what's going on across the country.
made history in the selection of your new Deputy Chief for Professional Standards. Why did you want to create that position, and why did you make such a bold move?
Well, when you look at, I've studied what other police departments have done all across the country, and this is something that's fairly common in larger police departments. Our size, not so much. But one of the reasons I'm sitting here right now is because I was lucky enough to work around people who were not police officers in the New Orleans Police Department. And they see things differently than we do. Mm-hmm. And that really helped broaden my horizons and change my perspective just a little bit. And nothing is gonna take away the fact that I've been a uniformed police officer my whole life. But I felt it was really important to have someone who was not a police officer their entire career to work in a senior leadership position of KPD, but I wanted someone that had criminal justice experience. So I wanted someone that was in the universe of criminal justice, but not so ingrained in policing that they couldn't see things in a different perspective.
You talked a little bit about seeing, the officers in your hometown help other people. At your core, in law enforcement, is that really the driving force you like, helping people?
It is the best feeling in the world to help those who can't help themselves. When you investigate a homicide, you're speaking for someone that is no longer here. There's a retired NYPD homicide detective that he has a sign that says, we speak for God. And when you really think about it, we're speaking for the person that is no longer here. And when you work sexual assault, domestic violence, or any one of these cases, you're speaking for people that can't help themselves. And that is the best feeling in the world when you're able to pick up the phone and call someone up and say, we have solved your son's murder. We're going to be making an arrest today. There's no better feeling in the world than that.
You've seen a lot.
I have.
How do you keep sanity? How do you protect or insulate yourself from becoming just jaded, cynical, or just dark?
So,
because you've seen a lot.
I have. I was trying to figure out the other day of how many dead bodies I've seen in my life, and it's in the thousands. And just think about that for a second. Dang. But, one thing that I try to do now is I try to unplug as much as I can. I just came back from an 8-day vacation in Jamaica. Just I got a little bit of a tan. And, I try to, I booked that vacation before I was sworn in as chief, because I knew about right now I would need a vacation. So I try to take time away. I read a lot. I try to read almost every single day. I like to get out and exercise and hike and have things outside of the job. Now, the phone is always never far away, right. But you have to have those interests outside of the job, because I know me personally, I will get sucked into the job and I will never back out of it.
Imagine you're talking to, or you're trying to recruit a young officer. They're watching this show today. You want them to come be a part of the work that you do to serve our community. What do you say to them? So
policing is one of the rare things you could do in life where you could change jobs without changing jobs. You could be a uniformed police officer, you could be a K-9, you could be a homicide detective, you could go out and work with kids in schools, and you could do all that in a period of 10 years. What other profession can you go change jobs within the same company, do all of those different things? This is a tough job, this is a challenging job, but the feeling of helping people, helping kids, just the other day, we had two of our officers, they saw some bikes in a trash can. They picked them out of the trash, they cleaned them up, they got them fixed up, and they went to a community center and found some kids that didn't have bikes and gave them bikes.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
Right.
Think about that, right? And these are, and our police officers do that every day. They carry teddy bears in their cars. If they go on a call and, a kid has experienced something tough, they hand them a teddy bear, and it's not much. But think about those things, those connections. Not only they make you feel good, but those acts of service, I think, really, truly, make for a better overall community.
What's your vision, and are you optimistic about KPD?
I am. I'm optimistic. I'm overly optimistic. If you talk to some people around me, I think the next year or so is going to be a little bit of a challenge for us, because recruiting is tough. We have a lot of employees eligible to retire, close to 100.
Wow.
We have more changes that we have to go through to bring the department into national best practices. But the future is bright. We're moving into a new building. We have, great new equipment. We're going to build KPD into a regional training hub for East Tennessee. And, for the current employees of KPD that are going to be with us, 3 to 5 years from now, and the ones that haven't joined us yet that may be watching this show on the fence, we're going to really enhance KPD and make it a first-class organization, and I'm really proud to be here.
Well, Chief Paul Noel, the vast experience that you've had, you coming to Knoxville, you see the challenges, you've seized those challenges, and we just wish you all the best as you lead the Knoxville Police Department. I want to apologize on camera to you for the behavior of my producer, Chris Marion, the producer of this show as well. He was hostile towards you when you came in with he's a Cowboys fan, you are a New Orleans Saints fan, and you guys had a little dust up on our radio show, and he showed himself to be not as professional as we would have all liked. So I want to apologize for him, on behalf of him, on behalf of our entire team and staff here, because we don't want to go to jail.
Well, if I supported a team as bad as the Cowboys, I would be a little upset too, so I'll give them a pass.
Thank you, Chief, for being on the broadcast.
Thank you, appreciate it.